Welcome to one of the many circle sessions hosted by Wonder Girls. Wonder Girls is a nationwide classrooms movement. We bring relatable female role models into classroom settings through our circle sessions. As you will see, the crux of these sessions is its dialogic nature. We're currently working with 150 plus classrooms across 7 Indian cities. Our aim is for every adolescent in India to have access to relatable female role models. I welcome you once again and hope you enjoy learning from our speakers' life journey and career path.
Good evening, friends. I welcome you all to the first session that we have with Wonder Girls. And today we have with us Miss Alisha Vasudev, who is a documentary photographer and an earth scientist. I'll request all of you to please switch on your videos so that Alisha Didi can see you and interact with you more properly. So let's get ready to hear from her and ask as many questions you have, be as interactive as you can, so that we all can make out the best from the 1 hour that we have with her. All right? All set?
Yes, Didi.
Amazing.
Yes, Didi.
Yes, Didi.
Okay, Didi.
Awesome. Over to you, Alisha.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. I'm Alisha. I'm a documentary photographer, and I'm going to share with you some of my work and my journey. I request you to ask lots of questions. I think questions are good. There are no silly questions. I'm very excited to actually hear your questions more than show my work. So as I'm doing my presentation, please put any questions you have for me in the chat box. And I would love to talk to you or answer your questions once the presentation's done. Yeah, are we ready?
Yes, Didi.
Great.
Yes, Didi.
Okay, I'm going to start now. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes, Didi. Yes, Didi.
Fantastic.
I see.
Okay. So, like I said, I'm a photographer, and today I'm going to talk to you about something that I hold very close to my heart, which is look beyond what you can see. This is something that my father said to me many years ago, and I truly believe it's like a very important aspect of my life. So I'm very excited to share it with you today. Hold on one second. Yeah, there we go. Yeah. Just hold on 1 second. Yeah, I'm sorry. Just 1 second. Gulnar, is there a way to? Okay.
Do you need any help, Alisha?
No, yeah, I'm good now. Thanks. Okay, so a quick question, and I want you to think about this, and we'll talk about this at the end. What are you seeing exactly? Are these icebergs in an ocean? Are these clouds? Something I want you to think about. And also, if we are confused about it, is it a good thing or is it a bad thing? Okay, so Gulnar, would you mind not making me the co-host because I keep getting the notifications of people entering? Okay, so this is what I do. I decode earth science through photography, right? That means that I talk about the science and environment through my photographs. I seek to make people realize that the environment doesn't exist far away from home. We always think that we have to go far away, we have to go to a forest, we go to the mountains, you have to go to the ocean. But have you ever thought that the environment is around you every minute of the day? And through that, I want to ask everybody who sees my work a question, that can we be more thoughtful about our actions and their impact on the planet? So this is what I'm going to show you today. This is a picture I've not taken in a mountain in a forest anywhere far away from where I stay. This is actually a small forest in Bombay. When you think of Bombay, you think of Mumbai, you think of, so many buildings, there's so many people, there's trains, there's so many things. But, we even have small pockets like this in the city. These are some very, very rare clouds that we saw after a massive thunderstorm. And this photograph was taken not even 100 meters away from where I stay right now. And this is a photograph taken in my own home. And it's just about what is our relationship with sunlight every day. I mean, now that since everybody is at home during the lockdown, you might have noticed that, your house gets sunlight at certain times of the day, different parts of the house get sunlight during different times of the year. And those are all things that I like to document. So what I wanted to share with you was that when I was your age, I didn't know I wanted to be a photographer. And that is okay. But I think the important thing is to sort of know that there are so many different things that you can do, which can lead you, on a certain journey. So I really liked visual data representation. When I was your age, when I studied, I used to make mind maps, I used to make diagrams, I used to like converting text to visual means. So yeah, a lot of diagrams and charts. That led me to actually study geography and get a degree in geography because I really enjoyed doing this work, which taught me how to read maps better. And reading maps, after learning how to read maps, I learned how to make maps. And after learning how to make maps, I learned how to read satellite data. I'm sure all of you have seen Google Maps, and all that you see is satellite data. So seeing all these, seeing these maps, making maps, I started to wonder. I was like, why are there oceans here? Why are there mountains there? What is this structure? What is, I got very curious. And that's what led me to actually study environmental geography and climate change even more, which actually led me to work in the rural development sector, or rather work with sustainability. So how I arrived at photography, as you can see, was a very roundabout way, because I wanted to tell these stories of the environment using a method that did not need anybody to speak the same language as I do. I didn't want my work to be in Hindi, English, Marathi, Punjabi. I wanted it to be in a language that everybody understood. And for me, that was photography. So here's an example of how I used my geography and environment and map making to, take some interesting photographs. I was just browsing over this map of Mumbai one day. You can see the train lines, you can see the metro, you can see lots and lots and lots of buildings. And I noticed that there was this one very funny structure with a tall shadow. Shadows generally tell you that, there is something tall over there, but it wasn't in the shape of a building. So I decided to go and find out what this was. And when I went there, I saw this rock structure, which you see on the left-hand side. Now, this is a very interesting rock structure. This rock structure is 66 million years old. 66 million years was when the dinosaurs were around, or they were almost extinct, right? What's even more interesting is that there are only 3 of these types of rocks in the world, 2 in the US and 1 in India. The ones in the US have big parks surrounding them, where people, because they're protected lands, because they have so much space over there. But the one in Mumbai is right next to many, many apartments and many apartment blocks. So this was a very interesting story, I thought, and it was very fascinating to me that I was able to find, one of 3 rocks in the world using maps. And without my geography, I wouldn't have been able to take this photograph. So what I'm basically getting at is that I'm an interdisciplinarian. That means that every little thing that I studied in school goes into my way of photographing today. Everything from statistics to geography to history, geology, English, math, it all, science, biology, physics, it all comes together in what I do, and which is what I find the most exciting to me. So here's another mountain structure, a rock structure that you see, and these are very common around Mumbai and Pune. And I saw these one day, and then when I started researching, I found out that these were actually part of a landmass that moved from near Madagascar. So there's in Reunion Island, where you see the beginning of the arrow. In Reunion Island, there is a volcano which is very, very active. And over millions and millions and millions of years, these rocks and these mountains that were formed there actually transformed and they moved towards India. And you might have studied in school about the Deccan Plateau and how it is very unique in its own way. So this is so fascinating to me that, I can look at something and then if I start studying it and researching it and I get excited about it, I can find out the origins of these original, these things. Which then brings me to the point that no artist is an island. As a photographer, I do not work alone. It takes an entire village for me to do the work I do. And I want you to think of this in another way. I want you to think about this in a way that if you want to be a photographer or work with photography or work with an artist, you don't always have to be the artist. You can be one of the many people I'm about to show you. All these people who I am about to show you are people who I interact with every day. And without them, my job, my photos would not be worth anything. So that's me, that's the photographer. And then you have influences, people whose work you like, other artists. For me, my influences are not just photographers. I get influenced by music, reading, books, authors, different artists. So there are all these people who make you want to take photographs, right? And then you have editors. They're the people who can help you show your work in the best way possible. They can help you understand that, oh, this is a very interesting photo. Maybe we should talk about this, or maybe this is not very interesting. So when you are taking a photo, so many times your idea of a photograph is influenced by where you were, what you saw, who you met, right? But when somebody else is viewing my photo, um, they don't know anything about that. So, which is why it is very important to have an editor who can help you get a perspective on your work. Then you have mentors, people who are going to make you do better, who will ask you the tough questions, who will push you to make better work. You have critics, people who don't always agree with you, and they are very important. They are as important as having people who agree with you. Because if you just work with people who agree with you all the time, you may not actually progress. When people ask you questions, they ask you tough questions. That's what makes you think, and that's what makes your work better. Then you have other artists and peers. I have other photographers, other artists who are just like me, who are trying to figure things out. I meet with them regularly and we talk and we review each other's work. You have researchers and writers, people who are going to write the stories that I might photograph, people who might do research for the photographs that, for the stories that I want to photograph. Then there are collectives. these are bodies of people who come together. They will, for example, if you want to be paid properly, or if you want to put out good work together, or they're like-minded people who come together to create a body of work. So you don't have to work in isolation. There are people who print your photographs. It's quite a complicated technical thing, and these are things that it's a lot of technique. There's a lot of it depends on the light, the paper, the ink, the printer. There is somebody who needs to specialize in it. If you are a photographer, it's hard to also be a printer or this thing. Then you have people who are going to buy your work. These are the people who are going to, in a way, support your income. And you have people who will help you pack and ship your prints. You have curators and galleries, people who are going to select your work to put it out in museums or books. You have publications, and you have patrons, people who are just going to, who are going to believe in you and encourage you to make work. All these people are very important. It's also important to realize that they are also, commercial clients and producers. Yeah. And then these are commercial clients and producers are the people who will help you actually earn money. I mean, through whom, when you take on assignments, you make money. And then it's important to realize that all these people are also connected to each other. They all have so many connections, and there are so many things that come out of this. So as a photographer, you are never working alone. But also at the same time, when you consider if you ever want to be a photographer or want to work in the art industry, there are so many options for you to consider. Yeah, very important. Photography is it's a job that keeps you alone though. You're so when you work alone. But here's something that I really encourage is to collaborate, discuss, and debate. And this just doesn't have to be about photography, it could be anything that you do. And you should be being excited to learn and then forgetting what you learned and then relearn what you learned. There's so many things, there's so much excitement. Like, I'm very excited about the work I do, and I hope that you all also are at some point. So this is what I talked about, my influences, that it's not just a photographer doesn't have to only get inspired by another photographer. An artist doesn't have to get inspired only by another artist, a painter by painter. No, there could be so many things, right? For me, it is actually music, books, movies, podcasts, all these things influence the work I do. I read a lot, I listen a lot, because I never know when someone might say something interesting that would be relevant to me. So here's a photo I took of this girl who was, it's quite a boring photo actually, but it's this girl who was just waiting in the museum for her friends to come back, and you can see she's waiting with all her coats and she's just waiting for them. I collaborated with a friend who is a writer, and this is what she wrote. I'm going to read this slowly. She's written this from the point of view of the monkeys looking at the girl. So you're going to imagine that the monkeys are alive and the girl is a museum piece. This is what she said. This is a roughly 20-year-old Homo sapien. We had her shipped from the deepest part of the Amazon, where just 103 more like her exist. Please don't tap the glass, or she might exhibit aggression. Their species is not used to tiny confines or others watching them closely. It's like the monkeys are talking about themselves. In her natural habitat, she would be returning from work at this time to watch Netflix on her couch. We haven't been able to properly erase that part of her brain. Please don't feed or taunt this human. So it's a very interesting perspective how someone else who looked at my photo um, saw this whole story about the chimpanzees talking about this girl who was confined as opposed to the other way around. So when you are photographing or doing anything actually, it's good to plan, it's good to research. Everybody thinks that this, photographs get taken by magic. Everybody thinks it's about being at the right place at the right time, which it is. But you also have to do a bit of background. You have to do, I'm going to show you some photographs of clouds that I have taken. That is a lot of calculation on my part in terms of which direction am I going from, which direction am I going to, where is the sunrise, where does it set, what time of day. There's a lot of things. So if you want to make great photographs, or great art, it does involve more than just picking up your camera and walking around. That said, photography is a practice. You do have to take many, 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 many photos. This famous photographer called Henri Cartier-Bresson said that your first 10,000 photographs are your worst photographs. And that is very true. So I'm just going to show you some photos. This is a volcanic plug. When a volcano erupts, and then once it stops erupting, there is this rock formation that it solidifies and rises above the ground. I took this in Sri Lanka. This is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and everybody comes to this town to climb this rock. For me, I wanted to photograph what the rock actually looked like. So by doing some research and planning, I ended up climbing another rock, which was similar, some distance away, so that I could go there and capture this moment, right? So for me to photograph the rock in this manner, it wasn't about actually climbing that exact same rock, but it was stepping away. It was about moving away, going to another place where I could see this from and give this picture perspective. Similarly, I was photographing a soccer match, and we were down, it was the finals, and these were it was the final of a big tournament, and they were having a penalty shootout, which is the most exciting part of a soccer match. And here what I'm trying to say is that there's many small stories that are happening around a main event. So the main event was, happening where there was these people who were, the penalty shootout was going on, and there's so much emotion. But I decided to take my camera. I decided to take a calculated risk and move away, and come to the sidelines where I saw this coach speaking to this player who was about to go down and do the next penalty shootout. What I did do was I did not follow the student while he photographed, but I waited for him. He missed the goal. But by staying away, these photos were taken 2 minutes apart. By staying away, I got to get a very interesting before and after scene about in this scenario. So that's what I mean by plan and take calculated risks. Like if something interesting is happening, maybe there's everyone is looking at that, but what is happening around it, which is so interesting and which is so memorable, which is something that people want to see. Because if everybody's seeing the main thing, they really want you to show them what else is going on. And yeah, this is the most important thing. Be inquisitive. Be that person who asks questions. Be the person who looks out of the airplane window. So here are some scenes. I love photographing clouds. It's my main work. And here are some scenes that I want you to see. This actually how are we on time? Okay, we have a couple minutes. So this is, when you have a rain cloud, this is the topmost part of a rain cloud, of those big cumulus clouds. And what happens is that it starts forming ice on top, which is why the cloud starts flattening on top and it looks like a big finger is coming across the sky. This is that same rain cloud, but it actually, if you look at it for a second, it looks like the upper part is outer space, but it's not outer space. It's just a dark, big rain cloud, which is full of water. It's about to burst. And this is me flying extremely close to that rain cloud. These are some beautiful early morning clouds. If you look at the bottom half of the image, you see it's very smooth. You see these sort of waves and ripples. And this is all thanks to winds. These are winds that are sort of formed, which were taking these light clouds and making them into this very, beautiful water kind of look. This is a photograph of Mumbai. You can see the mangroves on the bottom right. You can see the ceiling on top. And why I like this photo, and of course it was taken during the monsoon, but why I find this photograph interesting is because everybody in Mumbai says, oh, Mumbai is it's just building, it's concrete, it's building, it's concrete. I want all of you to take a minute and look at this middle area of the photograph, where, between the clouds. There are so many trees. There are so many trees. Between every set of buildings, there are trees, 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 trees. And I find this very interesting because wherever you look, there are actually trees. So it's like the people in Mumbai know that they live in a concrete jungle, but they try very hard to, have as much greenery around them as possible, which is so fascinating. And this is one of my most favorite photographs. This, my friends, is what it looks like when Delhi has an AQI of 380 degrees, when 380, when the air quality, when it's extremely polluted. This photograph was taken 15,000 feet, so that is very high from the ground. The bottom half of the photograph is actually all the smog and pollution, but the top half is clean air. And I want to ask everybody this question, that, which air do you want to be breathing? Do you want to be breathing the polluted air, lung disease, cough? Do we want to be living in the lower half of this photograph, or do we want to live in the clean, crisp air on the upper half of the photograph? And this is something I want you to think about. I want you to think about it, not just right now or today, but maybe, going forward also. So yeah, I think something that is very important is to nurture your curiosity. You are not expected to know everything. I want you to be curious. You should be explore, go out, see. If you don't understand something, document it, photograph it, go back, research it. It's so exciting to do that, because when you learn something new, it is extremely fascinating. So this is a very interesting photograph I took. As you can see, it looks like two trees are hugging each other. On the right, the tree that is hugging the palm, is called a strangler fig. And this strangler fig, as the name says, basically strangles the tree it hugs onto. So everybody can say, oh, this is such a horrible plant, it strangles the plants, it kills them. What's the point? But it's important to know that when these trees hold on to another tree, they don't, so these are called epiphytes, which are air plants. So they don't suck any life out of the trees, they only hold on to them. And in areas where you find them are areas that have a lot of storms, there's a lot of tropical storms. When there are storms, these strangler figs are the ones that protect the actual trees from collapsing. If these strangler figs weren't there, the actual trees would collapse. The other thing is, there's something called a keystone species in the ecosystem. So when there is no food in the ecosystem during certain times of the year, all the trees, leaves, grasses, birds, plants, shrubs, mud, everything is dependent on this one tree for their food. So while without this tree, all those people would not survive. So it's not people, but creatures would not survive. So it's very interesting. It's important to find, like, and this is what I mean by look beyond what you can see. I can see a tree strangling another one, but is it holding on to it? Does it have a role here or not? Is there some importance, or is it just unnecessary? I think these are good questions to ask when you come across a situation. And lastly, the importance of your voice. We all have a responsibility, regardless of whatever we do, to be accurate in what we do. I think we live in an age of fake news and a lot of information that doesn't have sources. I will send you a link or a couple of links of my work. You'll see at the bottom, I always cite everything. I want people, if they have any questions, to be able to read more about it, or if they're not sure about it. It's my responsibility that when I share these photographs, when I share these things, when I talk about them, that they are consistent, that they are cited properly. And the biggest thing is, it's very easy to complain about things that don't work. It's not so easy to be a part of a solution, but I think we all need people who find solutions. And it's important to be able to help people to think of solutions or present a solution, rather than just always point out problems. There's a million people who will point out problems, but who's going to provide a solution? And it would be very interesting if you all could think about that, as you go ahead. And the last thing is, avoid echo chambers and engage with different perspectives, which is something I spoke about in the ecosystem about having critics. It's important to not just be with people who agree, but it's important to be with people who disagree. It's important to have healthy conversations and not get upset. Tomorrow, someone might come and tell me, oh, your rock picture is absolutely wrong. The timeline is wrong. I don't want to at that point say, oh, no, I'm right. I want to say, okay, I'm sorry, let's look at this, let's find the correct timeline, and I think that is very, very important. And regardless of what you do, but especially as a photographer, I take this very, very seriously. And I'm part of two collectives called Diversify Photo and Authority Collective. And we're a group of global photographers. And together we try and make good photographs, and put good, relevant, well cited, well researched content out in the world. That's all from me. I am very excited to take your questions. I'm going to show you this one photograph. I took this photograph 10 years ago. And I think this for me was the moment when I thought I wanted to do photography. This for me was the moment when I thought that, yeah, there is something, and I think I want to explore it. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Alisha. That was just so smooth. We could just look into your story and hear all types of perspectives. And I'm sure it has opened a lot of questions for in the minds of our students. Um, so, kids, now I want you to please raise your hand, and one by one we can ask questions from Alisha Didi. and she'll take as many as possible. So we have the first question from a group.
Sure.
Pooja, Sneha, and Tamanna, you can come off mute and ask your question.
Didi, may I?
Your voice is cracking. Can you please type it in the chat box? Pooja, Sneha, and Tamanna, we can't hear you. Can you please type it in the chat box?
Question is that challenges during this ride?
I think there's some network issue at their end.
So I was going to ask whoever is comfortable switching on your video, if you could do that, that would be great. So I can see all your vibrant faces. Also, yeah, any questions, just put them into the chat box, anything.
Hello.
Yeah.
Is my voice audible to you?
Yeah,
Yes.
it is audible now.
Okay. So our question is, do you face any challenges during this? If yes, then how you face that challenge?
Sure, that's a very good question. Yeah, there are lots of challenges. It's not all fun and easy. It never is. Nothing is actually. But I think that the challenges can sort of vary from. It could be anything from traveling or being a woman and traveling to different parts of the world or the country, working alone. Like I was saying, I work alone. All photographers tend to work alone, at least when you are on assignment. And there are just things that you need to sort of be very, you have to kind of, that's where I think, the part where I talked about planning and researching, I think that is the best way to encounter any challenges that you might face while you are in the field. A lot of my work is done not in the city, not in Mumbai, it's done while I'm traveling. So it's very important for me to be well prepared. And it would be for anybody, I think. So yeah, I think planning and researching are sort of two good ways, and being safe and not taking unnecessary risks. I suggest taking calculated risks. I think those are very important for any challenges you might encounter.
I hope she has answered your question. We have the next question from Arpita, and she asks about your inspiration. What inspired you to be a photographer? And if any particular person is your inspiration.
So for me, what inspired me to be a photographer was that I love working with images. I love working with graphics. I love working with visuals. And I knew that right away. I love working with stats. I loved stats when I was in school because of the data representation. There were so many aspects of it. And I think that's what made it very clear to me. I actually worked as a researcher before I was a photographer. I did not study photography, but I did work as a researcher before. And I think for me, I realized that I like to communicate using images. And that is what made me pick up the camera. That is what, you sort of, I did a lot of art, I did a lot of sketching, and then you kind of try one thing and then you try another and another and another. And then I stumbled upon photography, which was what made sense to me. And in terms of inspiration, I have a lot of inspirations. But I think I'm actually most inspired by an artist who is a sculptor, and he makes these very interesting installations about the environment. And I can share the name and I can share them with Gulnar Didi, and you can take a look. His name is Oliafur Eliasson, and he brings these elements of the environment to, like, I believe in London he got these icebergs and he put them in the business district, and everyone said, oh, this is so sweet, they're icebergs. But what happened after a few days? The icebergs melted. And then everyone said, oh, this is so inconvenient, we've got to walk through puddles. And he says, yeah, what do you think climate change is? It's, ice is melting and this is what's happening. So, I like people who do simple work. And he's one of my biggest inspirations.
We have another question. The kids want to know that what devices are the best ones to shoot good photographs.
Okay, that's a great question. The best device to shoot great photographs is the device you have, whatever you have. If it's this, if it's a film camera, you don't need expensive equipment. Nobody needs expensive equipment to take photos. If in the olden days, they used to you take photos in cardboard boxes. That makes great photos. So whatever you have, even if it's a broken, there's so many interesting ways where people will take film and it'll be old film and it'll be expired and the colors will be all confusing because the greens become reds and the yellows become blue, and that is an art form as well. So don't worry about starting to photograph only when you have good equipment. All these photos you've seen, I have not taken with a zoom lens. I do not shoot with a zoom lens. I shoot with a standard lens. I cannot zoom, and I love it. I mean, that because it shows you how you look. And I literally don't use any fancy equipment. And you don't need it either. If you want to buy fancy equipment, up your cell phone camera, you could make a pinhole camera, you could use a cardboard box, you can use anything to make good photographs. You should just be excited. You should be excited. Like somebody asked me, like, what made me start photographing. The old film cameras, when you'd press the shutter, it would make this very funny sound, and not funny, a lovely sound. And I got used to that sound and I wanted to hear more of it, and that's how I got into photography. Because I was like, oh, this is a very, it gives me some satisfaction in making a photograph. So you never know, don't worry about equipment. Whatever you have is the best equipment you have.
That was a great answer, Alisha. Kids also want to know that how it helps you in your life. So
In
maybe in
what
your
way?
personal life, non-professional life, how photography is actually helping you.
Sure, that's a great question. So if you think about the number of hours I spend making photographs, right? I think like a camera. I think that's what happens. And one thing that is very interesting is that I observe a lot. I think I being a photographer, you can see a scene very quickly and notice things because that's my job. When I'm taking a photo, it's not that something is happening and I go there to take it. A lot of times something is happening here. So my eyes work in all directions, even when I'm photographing. So one of the things that happens is that you just notice a lot of things very quickly. And it's great. It's interesting. You'll be the person who will notice these small things in different places. Yeah, I think that's just like a very sort of physical way. But I think also another thing that photography does is that you realize that what you see is not, there's so much more that has gone into making a photograph. If you show me a photo of something, it could be anything. It's not only about that 1/50th of a second. There is something that happened that led to that photograph being taken. There's a story beyond what you see. There is some reason why somebody chose to press the shutter button, to press the shutter and make that photograph. So I think for me, when I see something, I don't take it on face value. How photography helps me is that I want to know more about something. I want to know more or learn more about something. Because a photograph is just a representation of a very small fraction of time. But there is a lot of things that happened around the photograph which made the photograph important. So I always want to know what else is there to see or learn or know.
I think in addition to, in continuation of this, you can also share what all skills you have learned along with photography just to click great pictures.
If listening to people, but also listening to what's happening around you, is very important. Like the photograph I showed of the child who was going to hit a goal and then he missed the goal. I would not have caught that if I didn't listen and hear this, pep talk that was happening around. And I think listening is very important. Also, when you talk to people, to kind of not make judgments right away. That is very important. You need to find out more. And research is very important. Research is extremely important. Everybody thinks that all photographers do is take pictures all day long. No, it takes a little bit more than that. But it also depends on the kind of photography you want to do. If you want to do fashion, or if you want to shoot photograph products, do ad campaigns, those are not very research intensive, but those are very production intensive. That takes a lot of planning, that takes a lot of management, takes a lot of working with crews of, you might see a simple ad, but it might have taken 60 people on the set in order to make that photograph. So it also depends on what you do. I'm just speaking about documentary photography and the work that I do. Uh, it needs quite a bit of research, but it's all exciting because I find it very exciting. It's not a headache or anything of that sort.
Talking about the different types of photography, what is your theme? Like, what are the basic themes on which you take photographs?
So for me, it is basically man, human environment relationships. How do we interact with the environment? Um, I actually have a master's I have an MSc in environment. And I think one question really bothered me, and it still bothers me today, is that what has happened is that everybody tells us that we are not doing enough for the environment, right? Nobody tells us what we should be doing. Also, if we, in India, if there is a certain, or in Mumbai, there's a fire, it doesn't mean that the people who started the fire are going to be affected by it. It might be people 100 kilometers away. So there is this huge distance between the cause and effect. There's everybody saying it's too late, it's, you didn't do this, you didn't do that. But did you know that if you walked if you walked once a week, instead of taking an auto rickshaw, taking a cycle rickshaw, taking another mode of transport, you would be more environment friendly. Like you would actually help contribute to reduce the impact of the climate on the earth. So for me, I think that is what I talk about, but I talk about it in our everyday lives. That's why the photographs I've shown you are from around where I stay. It's from my own house. How do we interact with the sunlight? Gulnar, I just did an essay actually on how we interact with the sunlight, and I'll send it to you in case the students want to read it. But how do these things, how is it that in June the sunlight is in this part of your house, but in December it's in this part of your house? Have you ever noticed that? Has anybody noticed that? That the light actually changes, it moves from different parts of your house. So I want to talk about how we interact with the environment. How do we interact with the air, the sky, the trees, pollution, plants, water in our day-to-day lives? So that's what I do in terms of my work, in terms of my photography. It's very science and it's very science based, it's very geography based, but that's because that's what I absolutely love. So
All right, Alisha. Is there any particular story when your critics helped you to become better? Any particular incidents you want to share?
absolutely, absolutely. So this is actually a very recent incident. It's only about 6 months ago. And I signed up for a mentor review session, and this person she's also a photographer, but she works with Vox, who, Vox, they make these videos that you might have seen on YouTube. And she told me, she says, I think you're trying very hard to be a photographer. I think you're trying very hard to be like other photographers, because when you are a photographer, you want to be, how do I know that I'm a photographer if I don't make work like everybody else? How do I know that, there are certain things that happen? And she says, I think you need to be hanging out with the scientists instead. I think that is your place. And that was something I never thought about. because I was so busy trying to be a photographer and take a certain type of photographs that I completely forgot that even though I was saying I want to do human environment and I want to talk about the environment, I was trying to shoot like somebody who doesn't talk about the environment. And that was a very it might sound like a very simple question, but it was a very loaded question. It was a very important and big question, because I was just wondering, I said, wait, for 10 years, have I been just doing that? Have I been hanging out with the wrong people? Have I been inspired? Like, what is going on? But I think that was the most important piece of advice I've actually gotten in my life, definitely in 2020, because it's made it so clear to me who I'm supposed to be working with. It's made it so clear to me what kind of work I need to be doing. Um, it's made it so clear to me who my peers need to be, you know. And I think that was a very, very, if I did not sign up for that critique session, I would still be trying to be a street photographer or something, which would be very sad. So, yeah, sad for me and my work, not for street photographers.
And that actually proves how important is it to know from people who can actually be critical to what you are doing.
Yeah. And I think it's very important to have conversations. You can never speak to a critique if you get upset. You can never speak to a critique if you're going to get angry and be like, oh my god, no, I think it's important to have a conversation. That's so important, to just stop and listen to what the other person has to say and think a little bit. You never know what comes out of it. You just never know what comes out of it.
Right. So we are in a habit of taking and receiving feedback in the class. And that is what I think helps most of us as students and as teachers both.
Absolutely. And
So
it's something that I just wanted to say, sorry, I just wanted to say it's something that shouldn't stop the minute you leave school. Or I think it's a great thing to do throughout your life, because that's where you learn. I mean, think about it. Think if I was in a room with 10 other photographers, right? And I was not interested in listening to critiques, and 8 other people were not interested. So 9 of us don't care. But there's one person who says, okay, I want to understand what the other person has to say. And they might learn something and do something different that 9 of us will not do. So, I strive every day when I wake up to be that one person who might learn something new and it might just impact my work somewhere.
absolutely. Arpita has a question about a low point in your journey when you felt like, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to leave this space. If it has happened yet.
No, it happens very often. That's the part of being it's the part of being an artist, because what happens is, um, this is actually, Arpita, it's not just one. Where is she? It's not just one low point. I think this happens quite often, because what happens is, when you are making work, you get very excited about it, and um, you'll really enjoy it and you love it. And then a year and a half from that day, you'll just be like, oh, this is like such bad work. I can't believe that I'm making this work. And this has happened many times to me, and then I will not photograph for 6 months or 8 months. This is before I was a professional. I mean, I'm talking about my journey from over 15 years. And then I would just stop and I would just not do it. And then I'd suddenly be like, how can I not photograph? So I'd pick up the camera again, and then I'd make new work. And then again, I would just set it aside and I would just say, oh, this is not good. This is nothing great. And then, but what happens is that this is a very healthy process. It might seem like low and depressing and sad. It's very healthy, because it's when you get dissatisfied with your own work that you go and make new work, that you go and start reading, and you look at more work. And if you look at any artists, right, if any of you are interested, look at retrospectives is a look back at the life of artists. And that is very interesting, because if anybody has seen Picasso's work, it's so abstract and strange. But did you know that he actually started by doing classical painting, where he made exact copies of people's faces? And then he was just like, this is not good, this is not what I want. And from that, he evolved into this very interesting surreal style. So I think the low points, as low and tough and disheartening as they are, it's very important for your journey to have that. It has to be an up and down thing, because without the low you can't do better. And without the law, you're not going to try and do better. So yeah, Arpita, not just one, it happens very often. And then you learn, finally you mature, and then you learn to accept your work. But yeah.
And Alisha, who supports you in such times? So many questions regarding your supporters.
Okay, good. I think it's the whole ecosystem. It's the whole. There's of course an ecosystem of family. There's an ecosystem of friends, and it actually takes everybody's support, because you're not someone who thinks like everybody else. I mean, I'm not someone who thinks like everybody else. I don't work a 9 to 5 job. I don't go to office. I'm away for weeks on end without connectivity, and then I'm back. I'm always walking around on the street with a camera. My poor family is subjected to me photographing them all the time, But that's just how it is. In fact, that moment that you saw of two people in the sun, like one with the hands and the face, it's actually my own mother and sister who were just sitting and getting some sun. So there is a support system. It takes a huge support system. There's family, there's friends, then you go into the mentors, educators, but then there's also other photographers, because it takes another artist to understand what, how. This is not, and this is a great question, because I reflected on this a little bit. So your photography is called a practice, right? There's no prodigies in photography, and that's the beauty about it. Um, there is there's no genius. You don't suddenly pick up a camera and make a fantastic photograph. It's not about sunsets. It's not about, there's no prodigy in photography. Everybody only starts becoming established in their 40s or 30s. I mean, when I mean established, I don't mean money wise. I mean, it's very, you can pay your bills. It's a viable career. But I mean, when when people start to get to know your work, or you start to become a little bit well known. And that is the beautiful thing. And I tie this back to the Henri Cartier-Bresson quote, which said, your first 10,000 photographs are your worst photographs. It's nice, because in a way, there's no pressure to take a magical photograph today. It's not about the wow moments. It's about the small things that happen in everyday life. It's about the small things that we don't see. And yeah, I mean, it's just something to think about.
Um, there is a technical question
Sure.
related to editing. So, is it
Mhm.
necessary that if you know how to photograph, you should know how to edit?
Very good question. Very good question, because editing means two different things. One is the color correction that we do. You want to fix the picture in terms of, because when you shoot on DSLR, you shoot in RAW, which is a very flat photograph. All your JPEGs that you see actually have a little bit of editing in them already. That's why they look so nice and contrasty and sharp. So yeah, that is one form of editing. The second form of editing is when you have 100 photos, how do you pick the 10 best photos out of the 100 photos, right? The second part is very hard to do yourself. A lot of photographers are not good editors, because like I was saying, it's about the moment, it's about who you met, it's about what you saw. You might have just you might have just done the most beautiful hike and photographed a very average photograph, but to you it'll be this memory, whereas to somebody else it might be this beautiful sunset or this beautiful so that editing is harder. You need more people to help you out with it. The first part of it, it does come with the job, yes. But also, we live in a time when we don't believe in too much editing. It's just about making it look, you just sort of sharpen it a bit, or you just add a little bit of contrast or a little bit. It's just about keeping it as natural as possible. And if you're a journalist, if you're a photojournalist and you work for the news agencies, then you hardly do any editing. But yeah, a little bit of it. It's not complicated, and it's actually a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun, because it's like, if you go get a haircut, And do you walk out of the parlor with wet hair, or do you let them, comb it or blow dry it for you? It's like, it's how you finish your picture. So it's easy to learn, it's easy to do. If you guys want to try it with your phone photos, use Snapseed. It's a great free app. You can just play around with it, see how it is. But yeah, it's important to know that when you start working. But it's very organic. Like, people just when you become famous photographers, then you can have people who can do that for you.
Thank you for sharing that, Alisha. In interest of time, let's take the final two questions.
Okay.
The best part and the most difficult part of being a photographer.
What's the second question? Maybe I'll answer this last.
Who is your favorite photographer?
Okay. My favorite photographer is a German photographer called Esther Havrath. She is an environment photographer, and she actually photographs these Arctic expeditions, these big expeditions that go to the Arctic on these icebreaker ships. They are basically research expeditions. And she kind of talks about, I'll put the name in the chat box, Esther Havrath, EstherHovrath. And she shows you what's happening in science and environment research right now, and how there are different initiatives that are taking place to, she explains the science behind environment. So yeah, she's my current photographer. I will put the name in the chat box right now. And the best and worst, okay, it's in the chat box. The best and worst part about being a photographer. The worst, I won't call it worst. The difficult thing is that it's not a charted path. There is no one route you can follow. It's not like you get out of college and you will get a job that pays you lots of money. The best part is the satisfaction. You get, it's really it's worth following an uncharted path. It's not hard. It's good to know business. It's great if you're an artist to study a bit about business, because we're not good at charging money for things. So it's great to study a bit of business. It's great to practice it. But there is no, if people ask you that what's going to happen in 2 years, what's going to happen in you, it's something that allows you to follow and explore the path that you want. So there is no one straight line that you follow, which is the beauty of it. Because if I had to do a straight line, I would do a different kind of job. I wouldn't do this. And the best part is that the satisfaction is great, and also the fact that you get to create something unique by just having fun and exploring it, and doing work that doesn't feel like work every day. That's for me. It could be for anybody.
That was beautiful to hear, Alisha. And I think we have learned so much from you today in this past 1 hour. There is one more question on a special request.
Sure. I have time, so.
Yeah. So one of our students, she loves to click photos, but she thinks that the photos don't look good. How can she improve on that?
Send them to me and we'll talk about it. But I think don't worry about why does she not think they don't look good? I don't know. She'll have to tell me that.
Ikra, would you like to come off mute and talk to Didi?
Hello, Didi. Didi, actually, they did not look like good. I don't know how, but Didi, people also says that it's not looking good. Who says to click photos of them? So how can I improve that?
Don't worry about what other people are saying. Don't worry about that, because you know what, photographing, taking photos of other people and them liking it are two very, very different things. because a lot of times it doesn't have to do with the photo you're taking. It might have to do with what they're wearing or how they're looking, or it could be so many different things. But I think that it's important, like for all of you, like for example, when you take a photograph, right, don't just pick up your phone and click. That's not how it happens. You want to see, you want to frame your picture. You want to see, okay, do I want to include their hands and legs, or do I want to cut them out? Do I want to step back a little bit? I think, the most interesting thing, and all of you can try it, whoever's interested in photography, is that you don't have to always click a picture like this. You can move in 360 degrees while taking a photo, and that's something that you want to explore. So if you're too close to them, Ikra, you can move back a bit. you know if there's something interesting on the side of the frame, you might want to include it. You may not want to put people in the middle. You want to put them on the side a little bit. There's so many different things. And always look at the background. What's happening in the background? Is it too busy? Sometimes we take even I've done it. We'll take great photos and there'll be something funny right here because I didn't pay attention, and it looks like someone's hanging on a wire or something, which looks so silly. So step back a little, try and reframe your photo, look at the background, and then take it. And if you like it, then that's important. Don't worry about what the others are saying. But what you can also do is look at more people's photographs. Very important to look at more photographs. Look, because keep looking. You learn so much.
That's so true, Alisha. I also keep doing the same thing with my sibling. Photo achhi nahi hai. So
Correct.
the actual problem is not with the picture, but maybe how I'm actually looking there.
Right.
Right. All right. I think it's time to close out. Thank you
Okay.
so much for your time, your effort, and sharing your stories and insights with us, Alisha.
My
It
pleasure.
was a great session. And yes, friends, we can leave a feedback for Didi, and yes, you will see the chat box flooded with love for you.
And if any of you have any questions, or you want to talk about photography, it doesn't have to be today, tomorrow, it could be 5 years from now, or whenever. If you anything, just reach out to me. I have a website, which is my name. I'm on Instagram, I'm on Twitter, my email's on there. Whenever you want, just reach out to me. I'm always happy to talk to other people.
That will be great. Thank
Yeah,
you so much, Alisha.
pleasure. Thank you so much, all of you, for your great questions.
Thank you, students, for being such a great audience today. And I hope you learned a lot and you have your questions answered. We'll see you in class in the next classes. Thank you. Please feel free to leave.